Emma Collins walked into her own wedding like she was walking into a prison. No love, no choice, no escape. Her father had made the decision over a single dinner conversation. "You will marry Dr. Nathan Blake, it is settled." She had never met him. She had never wanted this. But the man waiting at the altar was cold, arrogant, and looked at her like she was a minor inconvenience in his otherwise perfectly scheduled life. Emma lifted her chin, walked forward, and made herself one silent promise: "I will never, ever fall in love with this man." The universe heard her and smiled. Emma Collins was 24 years old and had her whole life planned out beautifully. A journalism career she was passionate about. A small apartment she had just rented. A freedom she had fought quietly for years to build. She was sharp, independent, and absolutely not the kind of woman who accepted things just because someone older told her to. But her father, Robert Collins, was drowning in secret business, debt, and Dr. Nathan Blake's family had offered a financial lifeline. The price of that lifeline was Emma. She found out on a Tuesday evening. She was married by Saturday morning. Dr. Nathan Blake, on the surface, was exactly the kind of man who made women forget their own names. Tall, sharp-jawed, with eyes the color of a winter ocean, cold and deep and impossible to read. He was the top cardiac surgeon at Blackwood Medical Center, respected, decorated, feared by residents and admired by every nurse on his floor. But arrogant? Absolutely. He spoke in short sentences. He never explained himself. He walked into rooms like he already owned everything in them. When Emma first saw him at the altar, she thought, Of course he looks like that. This is still a punishment." What Emma did not know, and what almost nobody outside his innermost circle knew, was that Dr. Nathan
Blake was not
simply a successful surgeon. He was the sole heir of Blake Global Holdings, real estate, biotech, private equity across 14 countries. Net worth, $6.3 billion. The doctor identity was not a cover. He genuinely loved surgery, genuinely saved lives every single day. But the empire existed quietly behind it. No flashy interviews, no social media, no gold-plated lifestyle. He lived in a large but understated penthouse and drove himself to work every morning. Emma had absolutely no idea who she had just married. The wedding night was awkward in the most architectural way possible. Nathan showed her to the guest bedroom, not the master, without a single word of explanation. He simply opened the door, said, "This is your room. The housekeeper's name is Mrs. Patton. She will help you with anything you need," and walked away. Emma stood in the doorway of a beautifully furnished room that felt completely alien and thought, "At least he is not pretending this is something it is not." She respected that exactly 1%. The other 99% of her was furious, exhausted, and quietly heartbroken about the life she had been pulled away from. The first 2 weeks were a cold war conducted entirely through politeness. They ate breakfast at the same table and exchanged exactly 4 sentences per morning. "Good morning. Coffee? Thank you. Goodbye." Nathan left for the hospital at 6 a.m. and returned at 9 or 10 p.m. Emma set up her laptop in the study and continued pitching articles to editors, refusing to let her career die just because her personal life had been hijacked. Mrs. Patton watched them both with the expression of a woman who had seen this specific situation before and had strong opinions about how it would end. She kept those opinions to herself for now. The first crack appeared on a Wednesday night at 11 p.m. Emma was still awake working when she heard Nathan come home. Then she heard something she had not expected. Silence, followed by the sound of him sitting heavily on the kitchen floor. She got up, walked out, and found him sitting against the kitchen cabinet, still in his scrubs, his head back against the wood, eyes closed. He looked exhausted in a way that went beyond physical. She stood in the doorway for a moment. Then she went to the refrigerator, made 2 cups of warm chamomile tea, and set one beside him without a word. He opened his eyes, looked at the cup, then at her, said nothing. But he drank it. From that night, something microscopic shifted. Not dramatically, not romantically, just 1 degree warmer. Nathan started coming home slightly earlier on Tuesdays. Emma noticed but said nothing. She started leaving a covered plate in the kitchen for him, because she cooked for herself anyway, and it cost Nothing to make extra. He started reading the article she got published. She found out because he referenced one casually at breakfast one morning and then looked slightly caught. She raised an eyebrow. He looked back at his coffee. Neither of them mentioned it. But something was quietly, dangerously building in the spaces between their careful silences. Then came the hospital gala, their first required public appearance as a married couple. Emma wore a deep green dress she had owned for 2 years and did her own makeup in 20 minutes. When she walked into the living room, Nathan was already in his tuxedo and looked up from his phone. He stopped. Just for half a second, barely visible, almost nothing. But Emma caught it and felt something she immediately decided to classify as satisfaction and absolutely nothing else. At the gala, she charmed every person in the room effortlessly. Journalists, board members, philanthropists. Nathan watched her from across the room with an expression his colleague, Dr. James, had never seen on his face before. Dr. James Carter, Nathan's oldest friend and fellow surgeon, pulled him aside near the bar and said with a grin, "She is incredible. Where have you been hiding her?" Nathan said nothing, just looked across the room to where Emma was making a foundation. Director laughed genuinely for the first time all evening. James watched his friend's face and nodded slowly to himself. He had known Nathan Blake for 11 years. He had seen him focused, angry, exhausted, and triumphant. He had never once seen him look at anything the way he was looking at Emma right now. James picked up his drink and said quietly, "You are in serious trouble, my friend." Emma, meanwhile, was discovering things about Nathan that did not fit the arrogant image she had filed him under. She discovered he visited the pediatric ward every single Friday morning, not as a surgeon, just as a person, bringing books and spending 30 minutes with sick children who had no visitors. She discovered that Mrs. Patton had been with the Blake family since Nathan was 7 years old and that he paid her 3 times the market rate and had quietly funded her daughter's college education. She discovered that the only photograph in his entire penthouse was a child's crayon drawing framed carefully, hung in his private office. She did not ask about it, but she thought about it constantly. The truth about his wealth came out not through confession but through accident. Emma was waiting for Nathan at his office one afternoon when his personal financial advisor walked in, saw her, assumed she knew everything, and began casually discussing the quarterly review of Blake Global Holdings. Emma sat very still through the entire 15-minute conversation. The numbers were staggering. The scope was global. The man she had been eating 4-sentence breakfasts with was one of the wealthiest human beings on the continent. When Nathan arrived and saw his advisor, his expression shifted. He looked at Emma and she looked back at him and said very calmly, "Blake Global Holdings, 14 countries, 6.3 billion, a pause. Interesting breakfast conversation topic you have been skipping." That night they had their first real conversation. Not 4 sentences, not polite morning exchanges. Nathan sat across from her in the living room and explained quietly, without drama, that he had kept the wealth separate because every person who had ever known about it had wanted something from it. His last relationship had ended when he discovered she had been leaking information about Blake Holdings to a competitor. He trusted almost no one with the full picture. He had not told Emma because she had been a stranger on a Saturday morning, and he had seen no reason to hand a stranger that kind of power over his life. Emma listened to all of it, then said, "That is actually the most honest thing you have said to me in 3 weeks." Something unlocked after that night. The 4-sentence mornings became real conversations. Nathan started asking about her journalism work, genuinely, with follow-up questions that proved he had actually thought about her answers. Emma started asking about his patients, not to fill silence, but because she had seen him come home carrying their stories in his eyes, and she wanted to understand what that weight felt like. They stayed up until 1 a.m. one Thursday talking about nothing important and everything real. When Emma finally said goodnight and walked to her room, she stood inside her door for a long moment, with her hand pressed flat against the wood. Her heart was doing something she had specifically, contractually, emotionally forbidden it to do. On a quiet Sunday morning, Emma found the crayon drawing. She had gone into Nathan's private office to return a book and stopped in front of the framed drawing. That had always made her curious. It was a house, 2 stick figures, a son, the kind every child draws. But at the bottom, in a child's unsteady handwriting, it said, "For Daddy, get well soon. Love, Lily." Emma stood completely still. She turned around and Nathan was standing in the doorway. His face was very quiet. Emma asked softly, "Who is Lily?" And Nathan looked at the drawing for a long moment before saying, "She was my daughter. She passed away 4 years ago. She was 3 years old." The story came out slowly in pieces over the next 2 hours. Nathan had been married before, briefly, to a woman who had left when the pressures of his surgical residency and the weight of the Blake empire became too much. He had not known about the pregnancy until after the separation. He had fought for and won shared custody of Lily for 14 months. She had been the center of his entire universe. He had restructured his entire schedule around her, learned to braid hair, memorized every children's book she loved. Then a sudden aggressive illness. 3 weeks in the hospital, and then she was gone. Nathan's voice was completely level the entire time he spoke. That was the most heartbreaking part. Emma did not say, "Shen, I'm sorry, dear," the way people reflexively do. She sat with him in the silence for a long time. Then she said, "She drew a really good son." It was such a small and strange thing to say. But Nathan looked at the drawing and something in his face, and something that had been locked for 4 years, shifted, just barely, just enough. He said quietly, "She always made the sun too big. I told her sons don't take up half the sky." A pause. "She told me mine do." Emma felt the tears come before she could stop them. She turned her face away. Nathan pretended not to see, but he reached over and pushed the box of tissues on the desk closer to her side. That was his version of tenderness. Emma understood everything now. The coldness, the short sentences, the walls built so high and so thick that warmth could barely get through. Nathan Blake had not become arrogant and closed off because he was born that way. He had become that way because he had loved something completely and lost it absolutely, and had decided, somewhere in the wreckage, that the safest thing was to feel as little as possible going forward. The arranged marriage, the financial arrangement, the guest bedroom, the 4 sentences, all of it was a man trying to get through life while carrying an invisible and enormous grief. Emma sat with that knowledge and felt her last wall quietly come down. She fell in love with him on a Tuesday. Not a dramatic Tuesday. Not a special one. He came home at 7 p.m., early, for him, and found her at the kitchen table struggling with a complicated investigative piece she was writing. He set down his bag, looked at her notes, pulled out a chair, and spent the next 2 hours helping her organize her research. He had no reason to. She had not asked. He was exhausted from a 10-hour surgery, but he sat there with his sleeves rolled up, reading her notes carefully, asking intelligent questions, pushing her thinking sharper and sharper until the piece clicked into place. When she finally said, "I've got it," and looked up, he was already smiling. Small, quiet, real. And Emma, Collins was absolutely, completely gone. She did not tell him. She was terrified in a very specific way. Not of rejection exactly, but of ruining something that had become quietly precious. Their mornings, their late nights, the way he left her favorite coffee ready before she woke up now, without ever announcing it, the way she could tell by the set of his shoulders exactly what kind of day he'd had before he said a word. She was terrified that naming what was growing between them would somehow break it, so she said nothing. She wrote. She made dinner. She laughed at his very rare, very dry jokes, and she loved him in every way except out loud. Nathan was fighting the same war on the opposite side of the wall. He had not planned this. He had not wanted this. He had agreed to this arrangement as a practical solution and had fully intended to keep it exactly that, practical. But Emma had dismantled his carefully constructed distance, not through any grand gesture but through 1,000 small ones. The tea on the kitchen floor, the covered plate, the way she never asked about his money after finding out about it, the way she had cried for Lily, for a child she had never met, and turned her face away so he wouldn't feel responsible for her tears. He lay awake on more nights than he could count and stared at the ceiling and told himself very firmly that this was manageable. It was not manageable. The breaking point came from the outside. Emma's published investigative piece on the one Nathan had helped her build, they went massively viral. A major national magazine offered her a full-time senior position in Chicago. The offer was extraordinary. The kind of opportunity she had worked toward for years before. Her life had been rearranged on a Tuesday over dinner. She sat with the offer letter for 3 hours. Then she told Nathan at breakfast. She laid the letter on the table between their coffee cups and watched his face. He read it, set it down. His expression did not change. He said, "This is exactly what you deserve, congratulations." His voice was perfectly steady. His hands were not. Emma saw the hands. She had learned to read him in the months they had shared this quiet life. She knew his steady voice did not always mean steady feelings. She looked at him across the table and said, "Nathan, what do you actually want me to do?" The question landed in the silence like a stone in still water. He looked up. For the first time since she had known him, Dr. Nathan Blake looked genuinely, completely uncertain. He opened his mouth, closed it, looked at the letter, looked at her, and then said the truest thing he had said in 4 years. "I want you to stay. Not because of the arrangement. Not because of your father's debt. I want you to stay because this, us, whatever this is the first thing in 4 years that has felt like something worth staying for." Emma stood up from the table, walked around to his side, and did something she had never done in all their careful months together. She put her arms around him from behind and held on. Nathan went completely still for 1 long second. Then his hand came up and covered hers. Neither of them spoke. The morning light came through the kitchen windows and Mrs. Patton arrived, saw them, turned around immediately, went back to the hallway, and stood there with the largest smile of her 71 years. Emma finally said into his shoulder, "I was never going to take it. I just needed to hear you say it." Nathan let out a breath he sounded like he had been holding for months. They had their first real kiss that evening. Not dramatic, not cinematic. He had been standing at the window watching the city when she came to stand beside him, and he turned and looked at her the way he had probably been looking at her for months when she wasn't paying attention, and she had absolutely been paying attention. He tucked a strand of hair behind her ear very carefully, like she was something he was afraid of dropping, and then he kissed her, quietly and completely and with all the emotion of a man who had forgotten he was allowed to feel things, and had just remembered. Emma held his face in both hands. And that was that. The families reacted in entirely predictable ways. Emma's father cried, genuinely, messily cried, when Emma called and told him they were making the marriage real. He kept saying, "I was so worried. I was so afraid it was wrong of me." And Emma, who had every right to stay angry, found she couldn't hold on to it anymore. She said, "It was wrong of you, Dad. But it led me somewhere I didn't know I needed to go, so we're okay." Nathan's side of the family, the board members and distant relatives who had attended the wedding as a business transaction, watched the couple at the next family event and went very quiet, because what they saw between Nathan and Emma was entirely, obviously inarguably real. Nathan took Emma to the place where Lily was buried on a Sunday morning 6 weeks later. He had never taken anyone there before. They brought sunflowers, Lily's favorite, he said, because she liked flowers that were almost as tall as she was. They sat on the grass for a while and Nathan talked to Emma about Lily and the real stories, the funny ones, the ones that made him laugh even now. The way she had demanded he read the same book 17 nights in a row. The way she had called blueberries blue babies. And no one had ever corrected her because it was too perfect. Emma laughed and cried and held his hand the entire time. On the way home, Nathan said quietly, "She would have liked you enormously." Emma could not speak for the rest of the drive, but she held his hand tighter. 1 year later, Emma Collins, now Emma Blake, by her own full and joyful choice, stood in the pediatric ward of Blackwood Medical Center on a Friday morning. Beside her was Nathan, no longer in his surgeon's coat but carrying an armful of picture books. They visited every child on the floor that morning, the way Nathan had done alone every Friday for 4 years. Except now he was not alone, and the children who had grown used to the quiet kind. Doctor lighting up when a laughing, storytelling woman arrived beside him every week. They had no idea they were watching the result of a forced arrangement, a Cold War, a kitchen floor, 4 sentences, a crayon drawing, and a Tuesday that changed everything. They just knew that these two people loved each other in a way that filled the entire room with something warm. And they were absolutely right. Drop Heatwave if Lily's story broke your heart. Share this story, someone needs to read this today. Unsubscribe for more stories that hit different every week.